Okay, well, let's look at what do you feel is the strongest argument supporting the existence of God? Well, strong for whom? That's an important question. If somebody's coming to me broken-hearted because they've just lost a relative through illness, there's no point in saying, my dear, just look at the fine-tuning of nature. I mean that seriously. I was asked by an atheist professor of philosophy at Oxford to address his students, who he told me were all atheists like him. And he said, we're going to grill you, but I hope you're going to use your strongest argument. Well, I said, if you know what my strongest argument is going to be, you'd better give it to me. So he said, if I'm ever to become a Christian, the argument that would convince me most is fine-tuning. It's strong for some people. Other people don't care sixpence about it. They're not interested in it. They don't understand its power and its force, which is great. People need all kinds of different arguments. Some need an intellectual argument because they're bothered, there's something they don't understand, and they need facts. For example, somebody's bothered about the existence of Jesus. That's very simply dealt with. All you have to do is read a bit of ancient history. Other people are bothered because they are immersed in various aspects of the problem of evil and pain. And you don't deal with that by discussing Genesis 1. Now, I mean that quite seriously. One of the questions here, which I might as well deal with as we're going through, is what's the hardest argument you face? Well, the answer to that's obvious. It's the problem of evil and pain. That is the hardest question any of us face. And we need to think about it, because if we've nothing to say about it, we're as bad as the atheists. They have by definition nothing to say. Because atheism is a hopeless philosophy. By definition, there is no ultimate hope. And that's why the Bible talks about it. At the heart of our Christianity is not a set of physical laws, there's a cross. And that is answering a big question. It's telling us at the very least that God didn't remain distant from the problem of suffering, but himself has become part of it.
What are you cumulating in your case?
A cumulative case argument is the kind of argument you find in a courtroom when they say that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It's when multiple pieces of evidence, such as the fingerprints, DNA samples, witnesses, all point to the guilt of the defendant. You have the same thing going on in the universe. You have the fine-tuning of the universe for life, pointing, so I would claim, in the direction of theism. You have the fact that the universe is intelligible. We can understand its underlying mathematical structure, which many have found to be almost miraculous, pointing in the direction of theism. You find that the underlying structure of the physical universe exhibits great beauty and elegance. You find that the underlying structure of the universe is discoverable. We can actually, through a step-by-step process, as things are arranged just right for us to discover it. That points to theism. And perhaps even the existence of consciousness in the universe, the mystery of consciousness, makes more sense under theism than non-theism. So you have all these lines of evidence pointing to the same conclusion, theism. That, to me, makes a particularly powerful argument, what's called a cumulative case argument.
Is there really such a thing as right from wrong? Does the existence of universal morality point towards God, or can morality just be explained by, say, evolution? Well, I actually think one of the most compelling arguments for the existence of God is the existence of objective moral values. It has two premises and a conclusion. It goes like this: if objective moral values exist, God must exist. Objective moral values exist, therefore, God must exist. That's it. So let's look at the first premise. If objective moral values exist, God must exist. Well, what is it about objective morality that requires God, or divine grounding, so to speak? Well, morals aren't part of the physical world. You can't weigh them like you can a rock or a glass of water. They seem to be immaterial or spiritual. They contain information, tell the truth, do right, be faithful and information comes from a mind, and for there to really be a real right and wrong, there needs to be a source outside of human beings. Otherwise, it's just your opinion versus mine. So if there are real moral values and duties, it sure seems to point towards the existence of a moral lawgiver, towards a God. So then the question is, how do we know moral values exist, that values and duties are really objective? Well, one way we know this is it's just obvious. It's obvious. Every one of us knows that torturing an innocent baby for fun is wrong. We simply know it. If somebody doesn't see that that's wrong, that person needs a therapist, not an argument. And by the way, when someone says, yeah, I don't believe there's right and wrong, C.S. Lewis is right, that person will contradict themselves in a matter of time. So I often tell my students, I'll say, if someone tells you there's no such thing as right and wrong, cut in front of them and lying. What are they going to say? That's not fair, that's not right, as if there's really an objective moral standard we're both accountable to. The other thing C.S. Lewis points out in his book, The Abolition of Man, is that across cultures universally throughout history, there are certain moral truths that people are committed to. Things like courage, things like faithfulness, mercy, caring for posterity. Now, the practice of those moral principles may vary, but there are universal moral truths that people are committed to. So if objective moral values exist, God must exist. Objective moral values exist. Therefore, God must exist.
I'm really simple. So as an engineer, a numbers guy, tell me, why do math equations always come up with a consistent answer?
Because they're always constant in this universe.
That's right, there's constants. But what makes them constant?
Laws of physics and math.
Laws of physics, all right. But who wrote those laws?
Well, man did.
We think that we identified the correct formula, we experimented enough times, and we concluded that's the law. Fair enough, but that still doesn't tell me why we have consistent outcomes. Here's my premise, that if there is not a bigger constant in the universe, there's no constants in math or in science. Because if we are random, nothing, we kind of came together over billions of years and sort of got our act together and became moral, started walking upright, developed eyes, nose, ears, mouth, taste, all of that. We kind of evolved that way. There wouldn't be any constants. We would never have anything that was certain because it's all random, according to evolution. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Do you believe in evolution?
I believe in microevolution.
Microevolution. What's the difference between micro and macro?
Macro is that we are descendants essentially from fish, and we actually grew, the fish grew legs, then we evolved into humans.
Okay.
Microevolution is that depending on where we lived, such as different climates, we adapted, we changed. Because hundreds of thousands of years ago, we did not know how to actually process meat. Therefore, our digestive system was different, our teeth were actually different. But as we learned to actually cook our meat and evolve and adapt, our very teeth changed, our digestive system changed because we did not need that powerful bacteria anymore.
And why did we decide to do all of those things? And what was the mechanism that kicked that process and guided that process so we could grow teeth, have a digestive system, develop something called peristalsis, which is what moves the food down to your gut, the acid to deteriorate it, the ability to pull out the vitamins that you need, plus process it through a plumbing system. When did all of those things take place? And who decided that's the way we should be?
Well, somewhere along the line, the coding in our DNA changed.
The code in our DNA changed. All right. Codes in DNA can be manipulated these days and changed. And different people have DNA. But no new information gets added to DNA. You can detract information, but you can't add information to DNA. See, what I'm trying to get at is it's a little suspicious that all of these things happened all by themselves without anything to guide them or to think them through. Okay, so for instance, let's say you had your teeth, you had your throat, you've evolved all of that, you've got peristalsis working its way down, but you haven't evolved your stomach yet. What would happen to your teeth and to your throat?
I would not know.
They'd go away because you don't need them for anything. You had to happen all at the same time. It's called irreducible complexity. You're so complex that if we reduced a component of it, none of the other components would exist because they need each other to function. All right, I want to ask you a question about DNA. How many cells do you have in your body?
Too many to count.
About 50 million,
Yeah.
give or take.
Yes.
50 million cells. How many strands of DNA do you have?
That I do not know.
Let me put it to you this way. If we took out your DNA, first of all, we could fit it into a tablespoon, but if we typed out the code, we wrote it down, you could fill the Grand Canyon with your DNA information 40 times. Put it another way. We typed out your DNA, and we took that and we tried to get it to the moon. Would it reach the moon?
I would say yes.
5 million times it would. That is a lot of organized information. It's too complex to have happened all by itself. Just like the sunglasses you're wearing, you don't believe that those just happen. They evolved kind of a nose thing, and then they got darker, and then there's a sun. You go, that's not really logical. And I don't think it's logical to suggest that we happened all by ourselves. I think somebody made you. That's what I think. I think you're designed by your maker.